This is ASRN, a audio service for the visually impaired, disabled, and seniors in Washington State, full-time, providing news, information, and much more. Also heard on KFAE 89.1 through the Fine Arts Radio Reading Service. And I have my guest this morning. And welcome back, David McDivitt, running for Congress. How are you, sir?
I'm doing awesome this morning. How are you, Gerry?
Just doing fine. That's what I love. And I see, and I promise you, I'm recording it, and it's working very well.
That's an awesome thing.
And the last time I saw you was at the Peace and Justice Fair. How'd that go for you?
You know, the Peace and Justice Fair was a good experience. A lot of folks out there talking about the ideas and things that need to be considered to bring us all together and unify.
Have you? I'm sure you've been to. How many have you gone to before? Or is this like your?
Over the years, yeah, I would say that over the years I've probably been to 3 or 4 of them.
Okay.
This was by far the largest of all of the ones. They've had more participation this year than any other year that I know of.
When I was talking with Kay Ellison about a couple of weeks ago, had her and Pepper on the show. I forgot Pepper's last name. I got an email saying that they were going to add more vendors this year, and I didn't have time to make my rounds like I wanted to, but I was commenting to you off the air that you are a busy person, and the events that you are or have, you're going up to, in fact, what is it, today? I believe at a grand opening of a gas station up on exit 22. That's today? Please remind me.
So there's a brand new gas station. It's a Chevron station with a Wayback Burgers and a Skipper's Fish Place all embedded. They're having a grand opening at exit 22 off I-5. The event started yesterday. They had a event yesterday afternoon. They have an event today, and they have an event tomorrow. And I don't have the card with me, but I think tomorrow it's all day, and they've got some buy one get one free offers, and they've got a raffle with a bunch of great prizes. They're collaborating with the Concerned Humans Against Poverty CHAP organization in doing this, and also with InSync Printing as well to put on the events. And I'm thrilled. I'm going up to do a couple hours of volunteer work this afternoon with them.
I always say about volunteer work, it's worth its weight in gold and then some. You can never have enough volunteers, and there's always room for volunteers irregardless what organization there was. And the Peace and Justice Fair was a plethora of great organizations, and I was reading off the list about last week. But most of all, I want to welcome you on the show. Again, always a pleasure to see you on the show, and your time to come out on the show. And a couple of the main points we were going to plan to or talk about is first transportation,
right,
and as well, equally important, a very hot topic among many people's mind is healthcare. And we can start off. David, again, welcome to the show, and I admire you. I don't know how you do it, but you must have quite a staff with you that just keep you on track, or
I have a pretty good organization that keeps me going. Since we were on the topic briefly about being busy, I just want to say that my opponent has had one live town hall. That was on January the 17th this year. And to date, I have had 19 live town halls, in-person meeting folks. I've got 2 scheduled later this month in Pacific County. And by the end of this year, I'll have over 30 live in-person town halls. And by the end of July next year, I will have had over 60 live in-person town halls. I believe that we need to get out there and talk to folks.
Okay, forgive the thing here. My question is, David, I'm sure the burning question is, why has she not gone to so many meetings? Is it because she doesn't want to, or what's your thought about that, your 5 cents worth?
Well, so that ties into the two topics we're going to talk about, transportation and healthcare. My opponent is on fire with respect to both areas. You know, in the Portland metropolitan area, we have a great deal of gridlock. And in the January meeting that she did hold, she made it very clear that she is absolutely against having single-payer health care or universal health care, Medicare for all. She's not going to sign on for any of those things. And, you know, it's a reflection of her lack of caring for the population and the constituents that live here in the 3rd Congressional District.
Now, knowing the fact that what you were explaining to me about her was, would it make, if I could say this, in my point of view, if I could express this correctly, that if you have such a big name as hers who's running and trying to keep in the public's eye, how can you consciously not make yourself more available? I don't understand I don't understand the mentality of it. I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't even make herself available during the election season. Next October, November time frame for the general election, she'll make herself available for a brief appearance at Camas High School and for a 1-hour, middle of the week, lunchtime conversation at the Oak Tree Restaurant for what will look like a debate, but it lasts for about an hour, and it's got a limited size of venues, so the number of people that can be there is limited. And the amount of material that you can cover during the course of a 45-minute to 1-hour session is also extremely limited, especially when you're splitting it between two candidates. So she's not out there in the public. She'll send a lot of really glossy letters and newsletters that are paid for by the federal government as part of her position in the government, but she'll sugarcoat those as much as she can.
If I could put it honestly with you, David, like smoke and mirrors or dog and pony, in a way.
I'll accept that.
To put it lightly,
I'll accept that.
Okay, you can say all you want and tell the people all you want to hear, but when it comes to substance or whatever, the actual thing is I'll be honest with you, it just doesn't make sense.
No, not at all.
And ever since I've met you and the conversations we have, I've been more in tune with more what's happening locally politics, but the way you're spreading yourself out, which is a good thing. You need to be in the public's eye all the time, making the phone calls and keeping yourself fresh in the public's not image, but their memory. Like, hey, this is what I'm here for. Here, I'm here to represent you.
Absolutely.
And I've never met a politician, let alone a person who has had so much dedication, and it's amazing.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm flattered to be referred to as a politician.
Well,
I consider myself to be more of a statesman. I've had a career.
Okay.
I've already worked enough in my life. I'm running only so that I can benefit and help as many possible people I can.
I didn't mean to pigeonhole you, so I apologize. not to pigeonhole you or putting it, but I'm saying in general who's involved in your career.
Right. Sure.
As a people person, but let me rephrase this, that I've never met a person so dedicated and such. You have a lot to say, and you want to you have the sincerity of wanting to represent the people, and that stands out. Not to compare, but I will refer myself from now on saying,
that's right. Yeah.
Because it could be a bad connotation, it could be a negative thing versus a good thing.
Right.
Times.
Most of the sessions that I have, even though I have an opportunity to speak about things and talk about possibilities and ideas, most of the time I'm spending listening to folks and hearing what they have to say and what they have to contribute in terms of where their head is at and the kind of things that they see that would be beneficial for them.
Right.
take transportation and healthcare as two focal points.
Pretty big issues.
Sure it is. You know, in Clark County and in our metropolitan planning area, we have also Multnomah County, Washington County, and Clackamas counties in Oregon. With our transportation and infrastructure challenges that we've been contending with for over 50 years, we have opportunities to correct a lot of things, and we've never been able to succeed. And I have a plan that will grease the skids and make it possible for us to be a lot more successful if we're able to come together as a metropolitan planning area and as a community to meet the needs. And I think our biggest problem now is gridlock, traffic gridlock. And with the oncoming population growth in Clark County, an expected 140,000 people by the Regional Transportation Commission over the next 10 years or so, that traffic gridlock is going to become nothing but worse. So we need to come together, and we need to come together quickly so that we can overcome the last attempt to replace the I-5 bridge and the CRC project.
Yeah, it was about a few years ago. I was doing a show from one of the rooms at the Cascade Park Library, and I had the senior planner on, who just became the senior planner of CTRAN, and I learned from that time on to make it a habit before the show, what do you want to talk about or don't want to talk about, and without thinking of the controversy, the big hot button with this person was the CRC and the trouble that they got into. I mean, it was good intention, but it was just like, and he looked at me like, no. I'm like, okay, let's talk about something else. What about the routes that are being changed, by the way? But still, you know, with a growing population, you need to plan out what to do.
Well, that's right. Just as I came in this morning, I met a woman here, Monica, that is involved in editorial work, and she made the comment that she's rather frustrated with the fact that the CRC failed. Right. Well, we should all be a little bit frustrated with that. I certainly am. I don't even go into Portland as often as I at one time did because of the traffic, and I'd like to, but it's very limiting, and I think that it's a problem that we need to contend with, and we need to do something now. I have a plan. You know, Gerry, in 1921, New York and New Jersey had the same problems that we're having now. They were growing like gangbusters. They had all kinds of activity in their port. They were just at the beginnings of having automotive traffic and air traffic after that, and taxi traffic and mass rapid transit. In our case, maybe that could be light rail. I think we could do better and have a more mass rapid transit. But I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to come together as a community. And our community is the Portland Metropolitan Planning Area. It encompasses all of the 3 counties in Oregon, as well as Clark County. And I would even extend that area up I-5 into Cowlitz County as well, because there's a significant population in Cowlitz County that commutes into Oregon.
Oh, yeah, they do.
To work. And so if we're looking at a bigger picture, we need to come together as a community to resolve how it is that we're going to solve these problems. And I think a Joint Powers Authority is the right body to do that. It needs to be a separate body from both Oregon and Washington, but one that works almost like a mediator between Oregon and Washington, and be responsible for managing the federal funds that come into those projects, those joint projects. And it needs to manage those funds so that the projects are completed. And it's a lot more than just the I-5 bridge, right? It's any project that could be jointly managed from the Idaho border all the way to the ocean, Ilwaco and Astoria. We have over 17 bridges. Eventually, we're going to have more than that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that we need to work together to come up with the right kinds of solutions, whether they're public transportation solutions or whether they're highways and freeways or whether they're access to airports or managing Uber and Lyft and taxis. The combination of all of those things.
Not just one or two, but yeah, you were talking about Calhoun County. I have not experienced the transportation system in Calhoun County. We were talking in our last conversation going all the way back to Pacific County, and I was amazed where my wife and I were going through one day that she says, "There's a bus here in Long Beach." I'm going, yeah, it goes to Oysterville, goes to Ilwaco. Yeah, little town like this, beautiful area. I go, yeah, I'm sure people have to get around, but I was just amazed that little Pacific County had such a transportation system.
Sure.
It was amazing, but I'd never been to the one on of all the years that I worked in Longview, I never ever rode one time. But when it comes to the solution, it sounds like that everybody has to, instead of fighting amongst each other or finger pointing, you have to get your heads together and come to a common solution to fix this problem and to project in the next several years the growth that we're having in Clark County. Transportation is big, but that's why I try to avoid Portland as much as I can.
Sure.
And what a nightmare.
Well, right.
Yeah, it's just that.
Now, years ago, Portland invested rather heavily with the MAX system, or light rail. And as much as I think light rail could be beneficial, and it could be additive, I look at light rail as having a capacity issue if we're really going to solve the problem of the number of vehicles that are on our freeways and highways. I think that there's other things that ought to be considered, but of course the Joint Powers Authority needs to take that into consideration.
Right.
Now, of recent note, it should be made very clear to folks that neither Oregon nor Washington have a significant amount of money or funds available to pay for any of these improvements. So we need to push hard on the federal government to supply 90% of the funding to get these projects done. So that's going to be a battle by itself. The other thing to be said, though, is that each state is trying to figure out how they're going to provide or raise the funds, and we've both got issues with that. Now, this last summer, in July, the Oregon State Legislature put a budget together. It's about 146 pages. Now, in that budget bill, they have a provision for their Oregon Transportation Commission to do an investigation, a study. And they made it very clear in that, and this part of that bill is only about 3/4 of a page long. So the first part of that is that the Oregon Transportation Commission is supposed to approach the federal government and get approval to do value pricing in the Portland metropolitan region. And once they get that approval, they're supposed to look specifically at a very narrow part of the Portland metropolitan area. That part is specifically identified in the legislation as being from the border, Washington-Oregon border, of both I-5 and I-205 to the intersection of both I-5 and 205 south of Portland. Nobody knows what value pricing means when it comes to that specific legislation. It doesn't specify. It could very well mean tolls, but it probably is not tolls. It's more likely to be express lanes that you would pay for, much like we in Washington have already in the Puget Sound region north of Seattle, or along 405 in the Puget Sound region. So we've got our challenges to put. My opponent is framing this as a tolls issue and is absolutely against tolls. It boggles my mind that anybody would want to frame it that way. It's not a tolls issue. It has never been a tolls issue. There is no specific plan or proposal to do tolls at this time. The deadline for the Oregon Transportation Commission to have any proposal is the end of 2018. And I think raising this issue is completely wrongful. Candidly, and my belief is that this is not at all that. This is a traffic gridlock issue. And I want to tell you that small businesses are losing a small fortune having their employees sitting in the traffic.
Time is money.
Time is money, and those small businesses are losing money, hand over fist.
You get very angry drivers.
Oh, man.
And then you get that cycle going, and you get anger, and then it builds up, and you get blame.
You better believe it. And it's a traffic gridlock issue for individuals because they're losing time from spending with their families, right? So they don't have the time to spend with their families. They're sitting in traffic. My fiance, who owns a home in Tigard, oftentimes refuses to participate in sitting in traffic, but it means that she's not spending time over here. And as a consequence, and has acknowledged, right, that sometimes it takes 2 hours to drive 20 miles.
It's ridiculous.
It's crazy, right, how much time people will spend in their cars sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic.
Right, exactly.
And it's non-productive time. And especially now with all of the laws that have to do with distracted driving, right? You can't even be on the phone in the car and have your time in the car be productive. So
because with the laws, because distracted driving at first. Someone, the other day I was having something to drink at a coffee place. I won't say where. I was on the way to somewhere, and she says, my wife, and I love her. She says, you can't do that. I said, well, first they have to pop me for having a cell phone first. Versus a drink. I don't think there's better fish in the sea out there to fish for, so I don't think there's a big concern that I'm drinking on a latte and I, God forbid, whatever, but just being honest. But still, that frustration.
Right, absolutely
it's
frustrating.
It's like, well, what else I know laws are laws, but it's like somebody was saying, well, what else can they pop us for now? I said, well, you can't fight City Hall.
Well, that's right. And,
put it lightly.
And as I mentioned earlier, right, with the population in Clark County growing by 140,000 people, and with the population in Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties also increasing. And I never got the information about how fast their population was going to grow, but I can certainly imagine. In fact, it doesn't really take much of an imagination to imagine it, that the traffic gridlock is going to be nothing but worse, significantly worse.
Right.
So, if we want solutions to be in place in the next 10 years, then we better be looking at that now.
You better be planning now.
Another little side point about this notion, and I want to give a shout out to my friend Ed Barnes and the Labor Roundtable, my friends over at the IBEW and the Northwest Carpenters, is that this issue has everything to do with the ability to grow the number of union, family, and prevailing wage jobs in our area to get these solutions not only built, I want my union brothers and sisters to be able to get a significant number of jobs that are going to pay them a family and a prevailing wage job.
Right.
We need that for our economy. We need that for our economy in the Oregon area, and we need it for our economy over here in Clark and Cowlitz counties as well.
It's very important. We were talking about unions in my family and my mother and father, very hardworking people. And that's what it means is to stimulate the economy going back to local jobs. That's another issue as well too. But yeah, that's a very nice shout out as well too, and perhaps maybe your friend would be interested in coming on the show perhaps one of these days. Just an open invitation, just because. That's all.
I'll let Ed know about that. Ed is involved with our former state senator Al Bauer, and also our former Speaker of the House in the state legislature, Bob Schaefer. And I think between the three of them, they'd be a great team to have on the show at some time. It would be very
fascinating. I'm open invitation for all three on the show.
Yeah.
Just because, my philosophy of the show is just as it is as it is. It's real and live, and that's the way it goes. I don't have no particular agenda, but I'm just trying to do my way and somehow bring a voice to the community that is not normally heard on a venue. I don't think it's a controlled venue for a show, as far as I know. It's just honest one-on-one bantering, really, David.
Right. No, I appreciate that. That's great. I'll let them all know.
Yeah. Open invitation. I'll just leave it as that. Going back to the frustration and gridlock, I mentioned to you the last time we were on the air that I got the email from Jamie or her office or, as a press release or something like that. And I do want to state the fact that I did try to outreach to her office, in all honesty, to come on the show. I'm just saying it as it is, but nothing happened, and I'll just let it go. But I made the invitation, but whatever. But I got this email that I was telling you that says, no more tolls. Stop the tolls. The huge word, the key point, tolls, and that hot button. And I read into the email. I'm going, okay. And that angered me without thinking before our conversation. Like, yeah, that hot word, but it's got to be more than that, than just, you got this, but what about this? There's got to be a little more explanation. Give me some more. What was the old saying that you used to say, where's the beef?
Right. Well, you know what? So some of the catchphrases, that have been used about that is, I will not allow Washingtonians to be the piggy bank for solving Oregon's transportation problems, right? They're going to use the money to solve transportation issues and road issues that they have.
We're not going to be the whipping post of these people.
Right, we're not going to be the whipping post of these people, and that's a completely false narrative. It's a completely false narrative, and not only is it a completely false narrative, but it's also a gross misrepresentation of what the Oregon State budget allowed for, and and it's extraordinarily premature.
That email riled me up, man. I was mad as heck, and I said to my wife, "Would you believe what they're doing to do?"
Well, that's right, and on a variety of venues, a large number of people are stepping up and saying, "Listen, I drive on those roads. I'd be happy to pay a little bit. I want better roads.
I want to pay my share.
I want to pay my share. I want relief from the gridlock."
So if you're gonna fix the solution, it's gonna cost you, irregardless, no matter who you are. But I'm willing to pay my share, whatever it takes, to get on that road. Pardon the pun. To a better way to improve things. Hey, I'm willing to do it like everybody else.
Yeah, and
nothing's for free, to be honest with you. But just saying, everybody's got to pull their share.
Well, that's right. Everybody's got to pitch in their share. That's okay. And a lot more people than one might imagine are willing to do that. In fact, would like to do that. Now, some of that approach, some of that was mitigated on on having done a poll. Now, I participated in that poll, but I have to tell you, having a master's in business and having taken numerous courses in marketing research, I'm going to be the first one to say it. That poll was extraordinarily biased.
Okay.
Extraordinarily biased. And so one cannot rely on the results of a biased poll to back up any approach. It was wrongful. It was misrepresentation. It was not in good standing with respect to representing the people of southwestern Washington or anywhere else in the world for that matter, the Portland metropolitan planning area. And it was not an approach that would ever substantiate unifying us as a community. And that's where I stand. I think we need to unify as a community.
Right.
Portland metropolitan planning area to handle all joint projects. And we still have our Regional Transportation Commission to handle local stuff here, and Portland with its 3 counties still has their JPACT organization to do the planning for all of the local projects that they have over there. But we need a mitigation that will help us resolve the joint projects and unify us as a community so that we're benefiting all of us as a community, when it comes to, federal highway related projects.
We all need to put our heads together instead of finger pointing and blame. Doesn't sound easy, but if we work hard enough, there's got to be not only one solution, but several solutions to relieve the problem and to project the problem in the next several years. And when I came back to Clark County after 25 years, I was amazed. I was not amazed, but I was amazed how much it grew and how much it's changed and how much progressiveness there is. And I've got to say about Clark County, it's very unique for several reasons. Not only as a community, how much they look out for each other, small business, community, trying to fix solutions. No, there's not a perfect system out there. There's not, but you try to improve it as best as you can.
Well, that's right.
Nothing's perfect.
Now, both the Regional Transportation Commission in Clark County, which also represents Skamania and Klickitat County,
right,
and the JPACT organization, or Metro if you prefer, over in Portland, are doing a fantastic job, and they collaborate and work together as best they can. And some of the projects that they're working on are, things like having buses be able to drive on the shoulders on I-205 in order to allow for a little bit better performance for public transportation with respect to bus rapid transit.
That's right.
And I know that Clark County has let, or CTRAN rather, has let the Metro organization borrow and use some of their bus rapid transit buses to see if they would be beneficial in the Portland area.
Right.
They have collaborated oftentimes, and they work as best they can together, but there still is a remaining issue between the two states, and that is that people in Portland and people or in Oregon and people in Washington have different ideas, and we can work better together. Right. If we have a joint powers authority. So that's where I stand. I think we need to do that. Jamie was proposed that idea, and she flat out rejected it, even though she was willing to acknowledge that gridlock was a concern.
But it's like saying, okay, I'll agree to this, but secretly I won't admit it. But deep down inside, maybe. But if I need the people to believe that I am, maybe they'll vote for me. But it's just like I've only seen one ad of hers on television, just one, and that's it. And the only thing remotely that I've seen locally, she's hosted a job fair not long ago. I believe it was at the Red Lion Inn or not the Hilton,
Right.
but that's the only time that I've seen anything remotely.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to be said is, there was some conversation or discussion about, that um, she had come out and she had said that she wasn't opposed to, use fees and that kind of thing. But her amendment, her recent amendment to the budget appropriation bill for the Department of Interior and other associated agencies was expressly a prohibition of using funds that were appropriated in that bill for any kinds of tolls on I-5 or I-205 anywhere in the entirety of the state of Oregon and the entirety of the state of Washington. And I say that because as a licensed attorney, though I'm not licensed in the state of Washington, as a licensed attorney, I do know how to read the law and know where it's not benefiting the citizens of the states. And I also know how to write laws so that I make sure that it is benefiting as many people as it possibly can. This amendment will not be a benefit to either the state of Washington or the state of Oregon.
So if you don't have any support, not support, but if you have no tolls or way to pay for things, how can a person expect to improve things and fix things without having, let's say, a toll? I don't understand that. What are the other avenues you have?
Right. Well, exactly. Look, I'm not pro tolls.
Right. No.
I'm not saying run out and toll.
No. I'm not saying. I'm just saying as an example.
What I'm saying is we need to have a joint powers authority.
Right.
And when that joint powers authority is established, we'll have equal seats.
Right.
At the table for both Washington and for Oregon, and that body can make a recommendation about whether tolls should be in place or not.
Right.
That body will make recommendations to assure that the funds that are achieved if tolls are sought,
right,
that those funds would be equally and appropriately administered so that they benefit the people of both states
exactly
in a fair fashion,
right,
and let that body do its work.
Decide what they need to do.
Let that body do its work. But the first step is establishing a body, a joint powers authority, just like was done in New York and New Jersey.
Now, going back to way back then, and that time period, that forethought of, okay, we're going to have a growing city, we need to address these issues.
That's right. When we got a growing
city.
So
if they could do it back then and at that time, why can't we? But you will have stubborn people. You will have disagreement. But it would be very ideal to, very well said, David, is to have some kind of body to form together instead of separate, just somehow come to a common solution and it'll be beneficial to all in some way or another.
Well, that's right. And candidly, that body should be deciding whether there ought to be a second bridge next to it that could be an express bridge. And you could have an express bridge that goes across, and people that go over the express bridge, maybe it's an express lane that goes all the way from Vancouver to closer to downtown Portland, then you pay for that. And then everybody else takes the part of the freeway that you don't pay for at all. Or maybe it means having express lanes from Tualatin and Tigard that go all the way into downtown Portland that are express lanes that you pay for.
Or the most common route that would be most beneficial, right. Exactly.
And there are other things that body needs to address, and that could be, alternative roads for some of the freeway traffic. One of the federal mandates, not only looking at congestion relief, is also to look at safety. And so, we need to have some look at safety as well.
Exactly. When I when I look at some news shows in the morning, it's amazing about the traffic. I'm going. Aren't we glad that we're not going 205 this morning?
Oh God, yeah.
And there was only one time that I was late to the show. I mean, I'm going Mill Plain past MacArthur that way, going down the hill here, off of Grant, that way. And even just that one section going off to the right before you go to Walmart, that offshoot going on to 205, normally would take me 15 minutes possibly from East Mill Plain to here. 45 minutes.
Oh, God.
Because of that one, everybody's trying to get over and go 205. And I end up going the back way. I'm going in my quick thinking, okay, I don't have GPS on my phone. What is the back way? I could go to MacArthur. I could go this way. And I'm like, that was bad for me.
Well, Gerry, I can imagine. I can imagine the stress. I can imagine the anxiety. I can imagine the impact on your general and psychological health, on healthcare in general. I have to wonder about how many people could have heart attacks in the gridlock. And
I know that was. Although I'm not to compare myself in comparison to those who deal with it daily, but for me, it was like, my gosh, just because that one little problem, there was that chain effect.
Sure.
And for me personally, being too harsh on myself, when I go on a show, I know I have no time limit, but when I say I will be there, I'll be there, and I'm going like, wow, this shouldn't have taken me that long to get from point A to point B because of that one little thing. And I can't imagine those poor souls on their way to work every morning dealing with it. Like, how do you do that? Here I'm complaining. Like, what have I got to say? I've got nothing to complain about.
Right, and so that begs the question, right? What is the impact that could have on your health care, on your health needs?
Speaking of health care, leading to that, perfect segue, a very, very important issue amongst many people nowadays, especially where things are going in our U.S. The most burning question, or one of the very important issues, basic needs, human rights, and not human rights, but that basic right to have health care. And I know a lot of people are listening out there who are 50 plus are worried every day, what about my health care? How am I going to pay for this? How am I going to do this? What's more important, eating or my health care paying the bills? And I want you to explain to the folks out there who are listening your opinion, more than an opinion, of healthcare and how important that we need to. It's a big issue. That's just the hot button, I guess you would say. Not the hot button. You.
Well, that's right. In my opinion, Gerry, healthcare is one of the top 3 bread and butter issues that affect people. The first being on the income side, how much people are earning with respect to wages, and how much people are receiving in benefits as senior citizens with respect to Social Security. And it's not enough. But healthcare is extraordinarily important because of the costs. And so it's the healthcare costs that tear deep into the income that folks are receiving.
Right, exactly.
Now, my mother's 85 years old.
Okay.
And she is now, with respect to her medical care, in what's called the donut hole. And so she has certain medications that she's supposed to be taking. And recently she informed me that she was in the donut hole, and so that she was no longer going to be taking a particular medication for the next 3.5 months, 4 months, because of the fact that she's in the donut hole. And she said, I don't have the money to be able to pay $200 a month for the pharmaceutical that I need to be taking. So I'm going to take aspirin instead. There are a lot of, right, so the baby aspirins. And so there are a lot of folks that are in that uncomfortable position. And our senior citizens should not be put in the position of having to choose whether they're going to eat or whether they're going to take their medication. That's a Hobson's choice. It's not okay.
No.
I believe that in the long run, although I think we made some progress with respect to health care in the Affordable Health Care Act, I think we could go a lot further, and I think we need to. I believe that we need to move in the direction of universal health care or health care for all or Medicare for all or what some people refer to as single payer. In Canada, the per capita expense on health care is $5,000 per person. In the United States, it's about $10,000 per person. Now, I don't know if that factors in the people that are uninsured. We have way too many people that are uninsured. But I'm of the opinion that we pay for people that are uninsured anyway. It's in the form of either higher premiums for everybody else or exaggerated costs for other functions that fill in the gap. But I know my cousin is an oncologist, and he says that once they start treating somebody that walks into the hospital, they're not allowed to just stop caring for them.
No.
So somehow or another, we're all paying for it. It's just a matter of how. At the same time, our pharmaceutical companies are recording record profits. Our insurance companies for healthcare are recording record profits. The CEO of United Healthcare, for example, is compensated $66 million a year. That could go a long way. And I think that, when we have policies that promote privatization and deregulation, we basically allow the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies a license to steal from the rest of us.
Exactly.
Now, if we took that license away, we could probably cut the cost of healthcare per person back down to about $5,000 a person,
right,
and have an agency, maybe like Medicare, to administer that insurance so that everybody has health insurance with no questions asked.
Right.
So in my opinion, I think people need to have the ability to receive health care. Access is just a moniker for saying, as long as you have enough money. So we need to stop the rhetoric of access and start talking about the ability to receive the health care. Then we need to look for opportunities for improvement. But if we're talking about receiving health care, it should be irrelevant to the job you hold. It should be irrelevant to how much money you have or don't have. You should simply and merely be able to receive health care.
It's that automatic consumption because you have this income that you have the judgmental, that mentality. I mean, just like, I could go on and on. Please continue. I didn't mean to cut you off there, David.
Well, no, we're having a conversation, so, if we're going to have some back and forth, it's a great thing. Listen, if health care was available for everybody, then we no longer have to have health care. We don't have to have health care administered by employers. Maybe every employee should be contributing to health care. Maybe every employer should contribute to a health care. And, if we roll back the clock and look at it from a standpoint of the way we did Social Security, in the 1930s we had an act that was called the Federal Insurance Contribution Act. we call that FICA. It was a payroll deduction. It mitigated a contribution from the employees. It also mitigated a contribution from the employers. I think we should do the same thing with health care. What if we had a plan that looked like Healthcare Insurance Contribution Act, and every employee, whether they worked 10 hours a week or 30 hours a week, or whether they were salaried, contributed a percentage, a small percentage of their compensation, matched by the employers with an additional contribution. Now the employers get a benefit. They probably have to spend less money than they spent before. They don't have to have administrative staff to administer that stuff. So they get a huge amount of savings. In the overall scheme of things, they probably contribute less than they're paying for health care now. And yet the quality of care for their employees is better.
Right.
They don't have to worry about whether an employee is a 10-hour-a-week employee or a 30-hour-a-week employee or a salaried employee. It's just a fixed percentage. They no longer have to play this game with employees that are 20-hour-a-week employees, and maybe they make it a better opportunity for folks that are working for lower wages to have more like full-time jobs instead of half-time jobs. They alleviate a lot of the stress and anxiety for those 20-hour-a-week employees that have 3 jobs, that are just trying to tear together to make ends meet. And we have an economic improvement for all of our society as a result. I think that there are huge amounts of benefits for taking a Healthcare Insurance Contribution Act approach. I think that employees that need health care get health care. Another benefit is that you're still covered in between jobs, so you don't have to worry about coverage between jobs. And if you're uninsured altogether, you still have some kind of coverage. And you receive care. Everybody receives care. And I think that we need to start looking at it from a standpoint of, the kind of society that we live in. So that, the big benefit really is that we're going to mitigate people dying needlessly, right? We're going to mitigate and deal with the problem of people dying because they didn't have health care insurance. Oh, yeah. And we're going to reduce the number of bankruptcies that people have to file as a result of having outrageous, medical bills. And just as sort of a side point, last night, I want to give a shout out to my friend Roger Stevens and the work that he does in Clark County with a group he calls Meaningful Movies. Now, last night, I went over to Cascade Library and watched a meaningful movie, the meaningful movie that was shown last night. It's free to the public, which is great, right? So you go over and you watch this documentary. The documentary we watched last night was a documentary titled American Winter. And there's a website for it, I think, American Winter Film. But in one of the exposés, there was a woman who had been unemployed. Her daughter had ulcers and needed to be hospitalized, and she continues to live with a bill. The woman lives with a bill. She's got an invoice sitting there, $49,000 she owes for the care for her daughter. And she's basically relegated to poverty for the remainder of her life for this $49,000 invoice. Because she has no way to pay it. No. And I think that's outrageous that anybody should have to put up with that. Another example, a friend of mine who was reticent to get health care, my friend Harry. And Harry didn't know it, but he had high blood pressure. He had 3 small tears in his aortic artery, and he recently passed away because he had so much internal bleeding.
Oh my gosh.
Now, he did get admitted to the hospital, and they did try to do surgery. He was only 49 years old, and we should all be having tears for the fact that this young man passed away because he was not able to receive the health care that he deserved to have in time to save his life. And so we shouldn't be seeing unnecessary death happening because people don't have the ability to receive.
Or a delay. That's something so critical and timely. It's just like because of this one complicated thing, because of the finance, and you're being judged, you pay the consequences for it.
That's right.
Because of someone else's delay. If you want to blame somebody, point the finger, blame the person who is judging you or stopping you because of your finances and so on and so forth. But, what amazes me is that how can someone actually have the conscience to go out of their way and consciously reject somebody if they have no conscience at all?
No. And that's one of the things that I think is extraordinarily important. A third example, a friend of mine, Mike, he had 4 heart attacks.
Oh my
He
God.
did not go to the emergency room because he had a deductible that was 25% of his salary.
Oh my gosh.
Right? He was afraid of the money part of it.
And that's what
So
stopped me.
you shouldn't have to worry about the money part of it to be able to go in to receive care.
No.
Right? So he did not go in to receive care because he was afraid of the money.
Because of that
obligations. The
thing.
deductible, yeah. So he didn't go in. Well, when he had his 5th heart attack, it was all over. The 5th heart attack killed him, and he never received the care that he should have received. And you shouldn't have to worry about the money part of it to receive care or to be healthy.
To put it plain and simple,
it's not okay.
Our healthcare system, in a way, to put it in a way, I guess you would say, just sucks.
We have a lot of room for improvement, and Bernie Sanders has just put up the Medicare for All Act. He's got 19 senators on board with him, and 16 senators on board with him already. I strongly encourage our own senators in Washington State, Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, to sign on with him. I think it's the right direction to go in. And Maria Cantwell and Ron Wyden from Oregon.
Right.
I hope they will sign on because they're both on the Finance Committee that the bill has been referred to. I hope that they will support it. I think we can do better.
I think once more people are more informed and to be knowing what they have, to be empowered, to have that knowledge, and people in their own way and somehow, I don't know how, but empowered, not only be empowered, but say, hey, enough is enough.
That's
Just
right.
stand up to the big man and say, I've had enough. I am done with this. You do not tell me what to do. You are not in control of my life. I'm in control of my life. I need to look out for myself. We need to look out for others and just... I may get a little heated, David, but I'm just saying, enough is enough.
Well, in in religious circles, it's often referred to that our society will be known for the way in which it treats the most vulnerable of our citizens.
Right.
Whether they're homeless, whether they're unemployed, whatever it be. And we need to stop the privatization and the profiteering when it comes to health security, housing security, food security. We can do better.
Oh yeah, and these people need to be, if you have it's really sad to have someone, no matter what, and those who cannot defend themselves are easy targets. It's beyond me, and it's just, there needs to be, people need to know, something needs to be done, and I'm just bantering, David, just speaking, that's all.
Well, I know that we're coming up on the end of our time together. So in closing, I just want to say I really appreciate being able to speak to you today, Gerry. If listeners are interested, they can support my campaign by liking my Facebook page.
Of course.
On Facebook, they can look for me by searching for McDevitt. That's spelled MCDE, V as in Victor, ITT, for Congress. And they can look at my website, mcdevittforcongress.com. And they can send me questions through my contact page or on Facebook.
Okay.
I personally answer them. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me by telephonically, they can reach me at 360-450-7945. That's 360-450-7945. And thank you so much again,
You're
Gerry,
welcome.
for your time.
It's always a pleasure, and I enjoy our conversations. And it's really, in all sincerity, David, between the bantering you and I, what I've loved about you is not only you're accessible, you're a real person, and to have your presence on my show in general, and knowing you as a person is